connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening. Welcome to State Circle. 1,000-year floods are not supposed to happen that often, but twice in the last 3 years, storms of that size have hit Ellicott City. The old mill town in Howard County is a flood-prone area, hit dozens of times over hundreds of years, but these recent storms were both fast and devastating, each involving fatalities. The new county executive has chosen a plan to respond, and Executive Calvin Ball joins us now from Ellicott City near the B&O Museum. Sir, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So for people who are not familiar with the town and its terrain, let's spend a minute explaining the problem. You have a number of streams that kind of converge in the same place.
Yes, Ellicott City is a mill town. It's about 250 years old, and 250 years ago this was the place to be to make sure that people could ship in and out.
From a rainfall runoff standpoint, what's it mean? You have a relatively small drainage area, but it's also very steep.
Well, Ellicott City, because of being so close to the Tiber Hudson, we've seen since about the late 1700s, almost 20 major floods. And so this is a place that can be that example as we're seeing more flooding, not just in places around Maryland like a Frederick or a Harford or Annapolis or Baltimore County, but around the nation and the world. We're seeing that climate is changing. There are storms that are increasing in their intensity and their frequency, and we can be the example for a 21st century solution.
All right, we'll dig into the solution, but this last storm, I read, was 9 inches of rain falling in about 2 hours. Is there a solution? Is there anything that engineers can do that's going to divert and handle that much water?
Well, whenever there is a battle against Mother Nature will likely win. However, what we can do is we can mitigate the impacts. We can make sure that towns like our Ellicott City and all around the state can be more safe and more sound.
All right, so you've been in office since December. You were presented with a lot of engineering reports. What were the options that you considered, and what did you decide?
Well, coming into office, what we had was a plan in place that tried to address the question of what can be done in 5 years and what can be done as cost-effective as possible. That plan took down about 10 buildings and left 4 to 6 feet of floodwater on Main Street at a velocity that I thought was just unacceptable. So when I took office, I wanted to see what can be done, not just to look at the next 5 years, but as we're approaching 250 years, the next 250 years. What can make sure that there's less floodwater on Main Street and will slow the velocity while also, to the extent possible, maintaining the historic nature and culture of a town where people come from all over the world to visit.
So part of this is removing some buildings. Part of it is a tunnel. How's that going to work?
Well, we want to come up with a holistic solution. What are the projects around Ellicott City and the area that will help mitigate different storms? You see, storms have various pathways. The 2016 storm isn't exactly like the 2018 storm, which isn't exactly like the 2011 storm, which are the 3 most recently recorded floods. So we wanted to figure out when we have the average storm that may have increased intensity, increased rainfall, especially in a very tight time frame, how can we make sure that we're the most safe? So when it comes to things like early alert systems, when it comes to just protection of debris removal. When I took office, we were removing debris quarterly. I instituted a policy every time there's a major event, we would remove debris. Since I've taken office, we've already gotten 3 major events and removed over 8 tons of debris. And that minimizes the water actually coming up and helps make sure that we have less flooding.
Price tag on the plan you selected, north of $100 million. How does a medium-sized county handle that?
Well, we're really lucky to have federal and state partners. Just this last session, we had legislation by Delegate Courtney Watson and Senator Katie Fry Hester, which yielded about $3.4 million. One of the first things that I did when I came into office was I met with Governor Hogan. I met with Senate President Miller. I met with Speaker Bush, God rest his soul. And I talked with leaders like Senate Majority Leader Guy Gazzone. And all of them indicated that they were supportive of Ellicott City. They were supportive of Howard County, and they were supportive of our success.
What should visitors to the town know? You mentioned some safety systems. There are still great restaurants. The business community, the business district was hard hit, but there's a lot of activity, a lot of good shopping. But what people remember about Ellicott City, unfortunately, these days is video of life-threatening floodwaters. What do you want people to know, and how will they be notified if something like this is building up again?
Well, we're working on an early alert system. We're looking at high ground places to go when people know that there are issues. We're actually got money from the State Department of Housing and Community Development to work on the facades. Main Street is open for business. There are people actually behind me and walking there, and will be a ton here over the weekend. The shops are fantastic. And our investment in Ellicott City isn't just because it's the second largest economic driver in Howard County. It's because the culture and the character is something that brings people of all walks of life together. And Main Street, Ellicott City is open for business, is exciting, whether you live, work, play, or just want to visit.
What do you think about the possibility that development in the county upstream of downtown Ellicott City played a role in this? The idea that there's less dirt, there's less ground to absorb rainfall, more driveways, roof surfaces where it comes running downhill faster. What do you think?
I think development definitely plays a role, especially development that occurred prior to the 80s when we didn't understand stormwater remediation. We didn't understand flood mitigation. We weren't looking forward to green development. And so as we know better, we do better. And so one of the things that I supported was a moratorium on development so that we could better understand the true impacts and how to mitigate them, how to make sure that as we develop throughout Howard County, we don't adversely impact our community and our safety.
In the few minutes we have left, I wanted to ask you about opioids. We understand on a statewide level, the death toll from the opioid crisis has perhaps leveled off. What are you seeing in Howard County?
Well, too many of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our sons and daughters, and our parents are suffering with addiction. Opioids have really infested our community, and we need to stand together not only to address the issues on the side of the manufacturers, who in Howard County we are actually making suit in circuit court, but also make sure that our loved ones don't suffer in silence, that we create a place of healing. And so one of the things that I've done is we've launched Howard House. And together, Howard House is a place that there is a treatment facility. Working with the state, we got a $1 million grant to go to grassroots for crisis intervention. We're working on a full spectrum of services so that people can be healed and can be more healthy. And although we are seeing the decline of opioid deaths and abuse, since 2016, more than 130 people have died here in Howard County. And that's not even counting the Howard County residents who have died outside of the county. Every death is a loss to a family, a loss to a community, and a loss to our future. So I will not rest until we come together and we combat this opioid crisis.
You know, I read that the most recent numbers for the county were showed that there was a decline in fatalities, but oddly at the same time an increase in the number of overdose cases. Does that mean that the first responders are getting to people quicker? The Narcan is being used? What's happening?
That's exactly what's happening. Our first responders are experts, and they are excellent, and they are responding quickly, and they're making sure that they save lives, which is a phenomenal thing. If you were to compare this point last year, we're down almost 60% in deaths. But that's not enough, and I don't want people to have a false sense of security where we aren't getting to the root cause and taking a holistic approach to addressing why people are facing this addiction and what more we can do to make people healthier and more safe.
And before we go, anybody who has a problem with this, you mentioned the treatment options. How do residents of your county get help?
Well, we have our Grassroots Crisis Intervention Center. We have our Department of Community Resources and Services. We have our Health Department. We have our first responders. We are all coming together as a team, breaking down all of the barriers so that there is no wrong door. If you need help in Howard County, we will make sure that you get the help that you need.
Howard County Executive Calvin Ball joining us from Ellicott City. Sir, thank you very much. And State Circle will continue right after this.